Hello and welcome to Taxed and Wasted by the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. I'm Emilio Garcia, and you may notice that I don't have a co-host this week. Well, we were looking for a co-host, but alas, the general co-host, the usual co-host, Brian Marlowe, is dealing with some minor surgery. Emily Dyer, policy director, is working on things that are more important than this measly podcast, and all of our interns are too shy. So here I am, all alone, telling you what happened this week. So we'll just jump into it. I'll try to make this podcast a little shorter because without a co-host, it's just really not that entertaining. So let's get through it. Victoria has announced its budget, and it's basically the polar opposite of what you see in New South Wales. So New South Wales, you have a state that managed to have its contact tracing up and running in 48 hours. You saw them handle the pandemic pretty well, start opening early on. Now it's been open for ages, and the economy is starting to grow. Businesses are opening. It's doing quite well. Then you have Victoria. Now, Victoria completely botched everything. It took them months and months to set up something resembling contact tracing. It then had to ask us for help here in New South Wales. They may have given more than 100 people, maybe 200 people, HIV or hepatitis because of some reusing of needles. And now it turns out that for their budget, they're going to focus on economic recovery through spending and not tax cuts. Here in New South Wales, taxes are being cut. You see stamp duty being done away with, a reduction in payroll tax, reduction in regulations, really good things. In Victoria, they're going to they're going to fund a new museum. Sorry, not even a museum, a gallery. So, months and months of lockdowns and, being arrested for even suggesting on Twitter that you were going to go to a protest, all of that damage will be done away because now you have yet another gallery in Victoria. So, no, really good stuff. We'll see how how the economy is helped along with a room with a bunch of paintings in them. We'll see. Probably won't do much. Basically, Victoria is doing something which is, terrible and not very good for the economy, which you would expect from the people who run Victoria and their particular ideological bent. But the thing is, Victoria really isn't alone in their approach to spending in Australia. It's true some other states are being more effective than they are, but spending is kind of the cornerstone of what Australian politicians seem to think will be the silver bullet to get the economy back to where it was before. And it's not great. Of course, if early on in the pandemic, when we shut everything down, the government had to spend money because they were the ones that shut down businesses that were doing fine otherwise. And so compensating those people for shutting down their business or taking their job away from them makes sense. But we can't spend our way to prosperity for too long. Now we have estimates that say that by 2024, we will be $1.4 trillion in debt. That radically increases the debt to GDP ratio. That means we're going to be paying back this debt for a long, long time. And it seems that the government is basically signaling that they are now taking on this new approach. We're going to spend our way to prosperity. And we really need to push back against this. It's anyone that tells you that $1.4 trillion in debt isn't a big deal is wrong. I'm not going to say they're lying to you because they might think that it's correct. They're just not correct. Having this much debt is bad for an economy. We basically then need to start paying more and more to the government in order for them to pay interest on the debt alone, not even taking into consideration actually paying down the debt, which is going to be huge amounts of money from our paychecks every single month. It's also not very fair, is it? $1.4 trillion does not get paid off quickly, which means the people that are making the decision to take all this debt out are not the ones that are going to be left with the burden of paying it back. It's going to be the next generation, a generation that had no say in this debt. They will be paying it back. And with an increasing debt and a growing government, there's no real path towards low taxes in Australia, which is the fair thing. We should keep more of our own money. So hopefully we will have enough politicians who push back against this in the coming months and years, so we don't reach the 1.4 trillion mark or even get close to it. But as of this moment, that's what it seems like is going to happen. And speaking of ridiculous spending, Matthias Cormann, he used to be in the Senate, and now he's gallivanting around Europe trying to get a job with the OECD. And it's costing taxpayers $4,300 an hour in flights. So it turns out that the Morrison government has decided that just paying for Matthias Cormann's flights all around Europe in order to apply for a job is worthy of taxpayer dollars to the tune of $4,300 an hour, which is egregious, especially considering how much money we're already spending, especially considering the fact that we're in recession, especially considering that so many Australians are suffering at the moment, that we would spend this amount of money just on getting a former senator from one place to another in Europe is not justifiable, and that should stop immediately. Speaking of other things that should stop immediately, there's going to be a royal commission, apparently, into the Murdoch press. Now, you may not like the Murdoch press. You may think that they're biased. You might think that Rupert Murdoch is a terrible person. That's all good and well. You can have your opinions. But a royal commission into how monopolistic Rupert Murdoch's hold on the media space is a waste of time. Kevin Rudd and his attempt to start this royal commission is really just funding a political hit job at taxpayers' expense. A simple Google search will tell you that Rupert Murdoch does not have a monopolistic hold on the media space of Australia. Now, there is a case to be made that they have a very large hold on the print media, and that's true. They have 65% of all print media in Australia, I believe, when it comes to news. But print media is decreasing. It's an industry in decline. And not a lot of people get their news from print media anymore. More and more people are getting their media either from television or from the internet. In fact, the internet is the big up-and-coming, not even up-and-coming. The internet is where most people get their news. And online, Rupert Murdoch doesn't have a hold at all. There is huge amounts of outlets, websites, podcasts, all of these places where you can get news on the internet that Rupert Murdoch doesn't even have very much of a hold on. And so if you want to see if there is enough competition in the media space, it's obviously true that there is a lot of competition. There's alternative media. You have the Big Smoke, the New Matilda. You have, if you want American politics, you have the Daily Wire. You have Fox News. You have CNN. You have The Guardian. You have all of these different outlets that you can go to. And it's obvious that there is not a monopolistic hold on Australian media. So this taxpayer-funded hit job is something that should not go forward, because we're going to spend millions of dollars for nothing to happen, and it's not appropriate. And on that note, I could go a little bit longer, but again, I don't have a co-host. It's not very entertaining to just hear me yabber on. So we're going to come to an end there. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, really wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get the video version of the podcast on Facebook and YouTube. And if you haven't become a member already, please become a member on taxpayers.org.au. You get some fantastic perks. This has been Taxed and Wasted by the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. We'll see you next time.